Thank you for joining us again for Retirement Designed Differently with Billy Voyles, founder of Fundamental Wealth Designs right here in Minnesota. He is a financial advisor, and he is here with financial advisor solutions to your retirement. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. Mr. Billy Voyles, what's on your mind this week?
Good morning, Spike.
How are you?
What's on my mind is how to control the uncontrollable, or how to control what's out of your control.
Oh, so you're talking about kids today.
Well, I do have 4 kids at home.
You have 4 kids.
And if anyone out there has tips on how to control 4 kids under the age of 7, call the number 888-379-1846. Leave me some tips on how to control 4 kids under 7.
Parenting for those who have a family of 4 or more. Please give Billy as many tips as he can. He's a man who doesn't sleep. But to control what's out of our control, what exactly are you talking about here?
We're talking about taxes and legislative risks and things that happen, you know, without our ability to really take advantage. We can vote, but we can't control tax law. We can't control what they're going to do to taxes going forward. And there's some things down the road that we need to plan for. Okay,
let's, I always like to do my jargon alert. Legislative risk, I think, rather intuitive, but can you explain, what exactly is legislative risk?
Legislative risk is really them changing the laws that will affect our ability to retire the way we want to, or retire comfortably. Most of it is going to be related to tax risk. In fact, we have some great news coming out of the state of Minnesota that we actually passed a law that actually allows us to now not tax Social Security income from a state income tax standpoint. For single earners under $78,000, for married couples under $100,000, they actually went away with Social Security. This just happened, yeah.
Groundbreaking news, folks. This is huge.
Yeah.
A great reason to keep our main residency here, to enjoy our family, to enjoy the lifestyle that we've built right here in Minnesota. This has not been adopted at all of the states around the country. There's some folks who are talking about it. I know this was also proposed in D.C., but hey, congratulations, Minnesota. You did it. This is fantastic. Explain what the provisional income used to be in it and how much of a positive thing this is for here in Minnesota.
Yeah, on average, you know, we estimate that this is about a $200 a month benefit for Minnesota retirees that's going to be back in your pocket for spending money in retirement. So it's a net benefit for sure for all retirees throughout the state of Minnesota, and really just helps us to create that income flow, more of that income flow that we talk about each and every week. The income plan, an extra $200 a month helps a lot.
Right. Huge congratulations. I was so thrilled for everybody here in Minnesota because it's becoming harder and harder. And this, of course, is one of the biggest concerns for all retirees is running out of money. We're going to do a huge program on Social Security, the ins and outs of it. But basically, back in 1935 and 1936, when it went into legislation, they said that Social Security was never meant to be taxable. And then it changed back in the 80s, so 2 different presidents, both from Reagan and then from Clinton, the one. They started taxing our Social Security.
Yes.
Again, and is this all because of that deficit that's building up? They're like, hey, we need to start getting money from somewhere, so we said, let's tax Social Security?
Absolutely. I think that's what it comes from, and that's the risk going forward. Right now, 85% of your Social Security can be taxed at the federal level, which is a high amount when you consider it. So looking forward, is that one of the things they're going to change in order to put more money back in the coffers? What really is coming down the road? Because we know the debt at $34+ trillion. The House just passed a law. We'll wait and see sort of it passes through the Senate. But another $500 billion spending bill. Just here you go, $500 billion. Got to pass it to spend it. I mean, we're going to have to pay the piper at some point in time.
Right.
And how they're going to do that is raising revenue. How does the government raise revenue? They raise taxes.
Right. That revenue is that tax. And the thing is, most Americans, if you look at the individual tax returns and the amount of revenue that the government takes in, 52% of that revenue is already coming from our individual tax returns. So maybe they could start looking at those bigger companies out there rather than us.
Yeah, leave the retirees alone and let us, you know, kind of build these plans and not worry about it. But the fact is, with all of the money in 401ks, there's $12 trillion sitting in qualified retirement accounts right now. So there's just a big opening for them to go get revenue from there. And in fact, they've already made some changes. They've already made some changes to laws that you might not have heard of quite yet. One of them is getting rid of the stretch IRA, which I know you don't like jargon, so I'll explain it.
Please do.
But the stretch IRA, so the Secure Act of 2020 made one of the biggest changes to IRA distributions that we've seen in our lifetime. So in the past, if your parents happened to pass before 2020, you used to be able to take a small distribution of that large amount, 2 to 3, 4%, a small distribution each and every year. And then you could actually, what they call stretch, you could stretch the growth of that account for 20, 30, 40 years, for the rest of your life. In 2020, they made a change where your beneficiaries now have to take that entire IRA over a 10-year time frame and pay the tax over 10 years, not 20, 30, or 40. So that was a sweeping change that put a lot of money back in the pockets, but it's not something that was really prevalent or front page news.
Right.
Where retirees are unaware of that.
Yeah, it wasn't front page news. These are those kinds of things that get kind of backed into a bill. It was in that Secure Act, but all of a sudden it gets backed in. We don't know that it's happening. We don't have time to discuss it, and the legislator just makes it happen, which I think is part of the reason that pushed you towards becoming an author as well. Tell us about your book.
Yeah, so To Roth or Not to Roth is a book that just came out, and we're really proud of it. It was really an excellent project to work on, because we try to do two things with clients, whether it's at our educational workshops locally in the Twin Cities area, whether it's on this TV show or in this book. We try to educate and entertain you. So there's stories, there's statistics, there's ideas, there's strategies, and a lot of it is centered around tax planning, so you don't have to worry about the legislative changes that are coming down the road, because it's built into your plan to approach, the pending tax changes, which I think we'll get to soon.
This is a bigger ball of yarn to untangle, so let's do this after the break. The reason why we want to Roth or not to Roth, and what the legislative risk is, the stick and the carrot of the 401ks of the last 4 decades. Folks, you can get your own complimentary copy of the brand new book, To Roth or Not to Roth by Billy Voyles, by calling the phone number. Now, there's a small caveat with it. Yes, the information is fantastic. Billy really enjoyed putting together this book and this project, but to get a complimentary copy of the book, we also want you to schedule an appointment, just so we can discuss it a little bit. Whether you stick around for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, we want to see if we need to put together a retirement design for you. Tax efficiency is incredibly important today. So get a complimentary copy of the book, call the phone number, schedule an appointment to come on in, and if he's in a good mood, he'll probably even sign the book for you. More with Billy Voyles and fundamental wealth designs of retirement design differently when we get back right after this.
I went into real estate in college. Part of the reason why I went into real estate is I got a phone call from my father informing me that he had cancer at the time. And my father was an HR director for corporate America. Got up early at 6, out the door at 6, and home at 6:30, and traveled. And I termed it that he worked for the man, and I wasn't going to work for the man. I was going to go get rich in real estate. But little did I know, the markets in Michigan were crashing and everything else. And so back to the fundamentals I went, which was go to school, get a job, work hard, get promoted, start saving money, and go from there. And the first job I got out of college was actually in financial services. And for the past 12 years, I had spent 1.5 million miles on an airplane to work with advisors. Financial advisors were my clients, and I was teaching them and consulting with them on how to grow their businesses. And I really just had to get off the road. I couldn't be what I wanted to be as a father to my family and as a husband to my wife by being on the road as much as I was. So the crazy next step in after having a 4th kid was quitting my job and launching this business, which is Fundamental Wealth Design. So it was a bit of an abrupt right turn, but it was all for the right reasons.
Welcome back to Retirement Design Differently with Billy Voyles, financial advisor and the founder of Fundamental Wealth Designs right here in Minnesota. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. We're talking today in retirement about how to control what's out of your control. And what we're discussing is legislative risk, the risks of the laws changing. We talked a bit about Social Security. Great move by the state of Minnesota that your Social Security here statewide is not going to be taxed any further. But let's have a longer discussion here about the 401k. What was kind of the carrot and the stick there? We were told you can save tax deferred. The pensions went away. Billy, explain this to us.
So let's go back. We'll do a little history lesson we like to do at time to time. So the Revenue Act of 1978 introduced the greatest trick ever played on retirees. And what I mean by that is they introduced the 401k at that time. And within 5 years, 53% of S&P 500 companies moved from a defined benefit plan or a pension plan to a defined contribution plan or a 401k plan. Why they did that is because they wanted to get those pension liabilities off the books at the corporation. But what we didn't anticipate was the problems this is going to cause for retirees. So, you know, I grew up in the state of Michigan, and in the state of Michigan, you have unions, and you have GMs and Fords, and everybody worked for one of those autos, and, you know, they retired after 30 years with a gold watch and a pension. And they had Social Security, pension, and their savings in what we term as the three-legged stool, which is a safe, secure, and happy retirement. Now with the 401k, we're challenged with you have Social Security, you're missing that pension leg, and now you have these savings, hopefully a lot of savings, but you have these savings in an IRA, 401k, 457, the MNDCP plan we run into a lot from state employees. What do you do with it now? And that has sort of been the issue. And the big problem, you haven't paid tax on it.
Right.
So what is it really going to be going forward?
So, and of course, if I'm an employee and if we have a big meeting and the CEO comes down and says, folks, we're going away from a pension plan, we're going to make you start saving for yourself. You're going to hear a lot of boos. You're going to get popcorn thrown at you from the front of the stage. But they said then, well, here's the deal, folks. In that 401k, you get to subtract whatever you put in there from your taxable monies for your income reporting for that year. So if you put up to the maximum, which wasn't as much back then, but today, let's say around 15,000, 18,000, and you can do catch-up contribution, you can put close to 30,500 if you're over the age of 50. But you get to subtract all of that from your taxes. So there's the carrot, right? They're like, hey, you get to subtract that. But going all the way back to 10 minutes ago, the legislative risk of that fallacy was they said, well, when you get to retirement, your taxes are probably lower because you don't have an income anymore. Yeah. Billy, do you think taxes are going to be lower in the next 5 or 10 years?
Spike, I don't think so. And if you ask anybody, I ask people at my workshops all the time, do you think taxes are going lower or do you think taxes are going higher? And our viewers, our clients, the people we meet with, they all think taxes are going higher. I mean, we have the debt to deal with, and the biggest problem with the debt is not necessarily the $34 trillion. That is a big problem. I'll tell you a little story about what $1 trillion means in a second. But the biggest problem is now we're paying 5% interest on the debt, which is equal to $2 billion a day. Our spending on just interest is more than Medicare spending and defense spending combined.
Right. And depending on when the show airs, I'm sorry, because the $1 trillion is adding up about every 100 days. Yeah. So it could be 35 by the time this is airing. Every 100 days. Is the government on a Discover card? I mean, this is the worst interest rate I've heard of.
Yeah, it's simply unsustainable, and that's one of the reasons why I think the Fed wants to lower interest rates is because we can't afford the interest rates where they are, so something has to give. We're either going to have to raise taxes significantly, or we're going to have to figure out a way to spend less, which they don't ever seem to want to do.
Right. Okay, so I want to explain this book here and the entire title of it, To Roth or Not to Roth. First, we have to say this is not advice for every single person watching the program. Billy needs to sit down with you, find out if this is a good strategy and idea for you, but let's tell him about the difference. Yeah. Your regular 401k, your tax deferred, you get to subtract that. You don't have to pay tax on that until you start withdrawing it in your retirement years. The difference with a Roth is, and by the way, over 77% of the companies here in the United States today have a Roth 401k, so call your provider, find out there. Very likely they do. When you put money into a Roth 401k, it's on your taxes for that year. But what's the bonus then for later? What happens to that Roth account?
So you experience tax-free growth and tax-free distributions for the rest of your life. And we went over the Secure Act earlier, and there's a 10-year rule on IRA distributions. There's also a 10-year rule on Roth. But if you pass a Roth to the next generation for a legacy, they get 10 more years of tax-free growth before it becomes a taxable account. So when we do Roth conversions, we think not only about your life expectancy and when you might use the money, but a lot of times Roth is the money that's left over to pass to the next generation, and it is the most efficient way to pass wealth to the next generation.
Now, by putting money then into your Roth 401k, you could increase your tax bracket. By doing things like a Roth conversion, which again, I think you need to be of a certain age, you need to be able to pay that tax amount. So if you've got a $500,000 account and you want to convert this into a Roth, you're going to have to pay those taxes at your tax bracket. So you might not want to do it all at once. You need to sit down with someone is what we're saying. But more importantly, you need to sit down with someone who is retirement income minded. We appreciate all the CPAs out there, but from what I understand from talking to you is that you almost sometimes have to retrain a CPA. Most people will come in and they feel like they're doing their job because the client says, I want to pay as little taxes as possible this year.
Yeah.
But that might not always be the best goal for down the road. Do you have to try to get that through to some of the CPAs?
Absolutely, that's a great point. And we sometimes have to, wrestle with your CPA a little bit in order to pay more tax now in order to not pay as much tax later. So we really try to help you pay the least amount of tax legally possible over your retirement, which might mean you have to pay more tax in the current year. And that's where we're sort of getting a little bit of a battle with them because they are trained, and why you get along with your CPA is because they're in it for immediate gratification. They're in it for the best possible scenario with just thinking about today. I can't just think about today. I have to think about the next 15 or 25 years because that's how long your retirement's going to last. So we're trying to figure out how do you pay the least amount of tax over the next 20, 25 years. Sometimes we'll help you have a discussion with your CPA on why that might be the case. A Roth conversion might be right for you.
I love that you're breaking this philosophy, and I know it's going to be a little hard work, and I know even for our viewers out there, this might be hard to hear for the very first time, but what Billy is saying here is that for the last 4.5 decades, we've been taught to save tax deferred. We might need to change our thinking right now. National debt, 34 to 35 trillion and counting every single day. So much money sitting in our 401ks. So maybe we pay the taxes now at one of the lowest tax brackets in history. It's about the third lowest tax bracket in history. This is the legislative risk, that they change the tax brackets on us after we've saved for 4 decades and go, oops, I guess you're going to have to pay the same amount as when you were working. We're trying to help you flip that, folks. So maybe you might want to consider a Roth. Maybe you might want to consider a Roth conversion. So we call it the Roth Conversion Challenge as well. We challenge folks to come into your office with those retirement accounts and go, hey, what would it look like if we paid a little bit of these taxes? Because you can show them mathematically, if we pay tax now, how much they could have in tax-free income down the road. And by the way, then what you just announced about Social Security here in Minnesota, there's another tax-free lane, which we're talking about is tax efficiency, is keeping more in our own pocket, right?
Absolutely. When you think about your tax-deferred accounts, you have not paid any tax on them yet. So if you have $1,000 of income coming in and you're in an effective 20% tax bracket, you'll get $800 back in your pocket. If through the tax changes that we're about to experience and what comes beyond that, that's what worries me, is what's beyond that. Maybe your bracket's now 30%. Well, now you only net $700 in your pocket. So taxes, just taxes alone, are going to corrode your purchasing power. And then you add on inflation and longevity and all the other retirement risks we talk about today. And that's why retirees really need to work with an advisor that will provide them a written plan. And we call it our retirement design. So we can design a retirement right for you that fits and considers all the things that we have to consider going forward, not just your investments. We want to look at your taxes. We want to look at your income plan. We want to look at your budget. We want to look at where your expenses go to figure out how to provide you with the best written plan for your retirement so you can retire with confidence.
Exactly. We're talking a lot today about taxes, but your retirement design is holistic. It's inclusive. As Billy just said, your investments, of course, the tax situation. And we can talk to you about estate planning, your medical choices, Social Security, how and when to take it, long-term care needs, all of that and more. But taxes are so important for today's modern retiree. So we want to get you this copy of this book right here, To Roth or Not to Roth. When you call and say, I'd like my retirement design, we will get you started on that process, no cost to you, and we'll give you a complimentary copy of the book as well. But you need to act, and need to act right now. We have people standing by the phone lines. Call the phone number you see right down here on the bottom of the screen. More with Billy Voyles, founder of Fundamental Wealth Designs, when we get back right after this.
We've coined the term retirement design differently. People might ask why and how are you actually different? Well, one, we are independent, take a fiduciary approach, and three, we take a completely holistic approach at the same time. Having those three things at our disposal allows us to build exactly the type of plans we want, and we do so by following a very sort of specific guidelines in doing so. So the first is we want to create a foundational income plan for you. You have to know where your money is going to be coming from in order to spend it. Second is minimizing taxes, because we want to pay the least amount of tax legally possible over the rest of your life. Third is we want to make sure that we maximize sort of that risk-reward relationship. We find a lot of people coming in, they're paying excess fees, they're taking too much risk for what they're actually getting in return. And then last, let's have some fun. Because otherwise, what are we retiring for, right? We still have to have that goal, that why of retirement.
Welcome back. Here with Billy Voyles, financial advisor and the founder of Fundamental Wealth Designs. And this is your Retirement Designed Differently. This is our favorite segment, the closing of the program here. You might need an advisor if... Okay, that does sound a little familiar. I think there was a comedian.
Yes, of course.
Who did that. We'll give him props. But we might need an advisor if. If what, Billy?
You may need an advisor if you don't have a tax plan in retirement already.
Okay. All right. So there was, again, I want to go back to the legislative risk. A lot of these tax laws get passed. We don't even see it. What about the one that happened in 2016? Are you a fan of that one?
I am a big fan of that one because it gave us one of the lowest tax brackets in history for the past 6 years. It lowered tax brackets at the original level from 12 to 10, 15 back to 12. But the problem is it's expiring and sunsetting soon, and we're going to actually see those tax brackets revert back to the pre-2016 levels, and that's going to be the problem.
Unless Congress comes together.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And we all know how well they get along. So this Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2016, as you said, it brought brackets down 2 to 3% here and there. I think really affecting a lot of the folks in that 20 range, somewhere in there. But then what else? I think you said something about then our personal exemptions changing back as well?
Yeah, so what is set to happen right now is we have 2024 and 2025 as designed at the current tax bracket situation. But in 2026, your taxes are likely to go up. And again, as Spike said, they have to pass an extension or a law to extend the taxes as is. If they do nothing, then this is going to happen, and we know that Washington is good at doing nothing. Right. So what is going to happen is tax brackets are going to revert back to their former levels, which is about 2, 3, 4% for each bracket. So your effective bracket's going to go up. But here's the one thing. What have we not done the last 6 or 7 years? And that is itemized our deductions. Because the standard deduction was raised so high, almost $14,000 for a single, almost $28,000 for a married couple, that we just utilized that standard deduction for the past 6 years. Well, that is getting cut roughly in half. So we're going to, not only are we going to increase our tax brackets by 3 or 4%, we're now going to get a reduction in the standard deduction, which is going to increase our taxes probably more significantly than the brackets changing.
I see everybody's taxes going up almost 5 or 10%. And you're not going to find out until you go in April. And then you go to your CPA and say, I want to pay as little in taxes as possible. And they say, wait a minute, why am I paying so much more than I did? Why am I getting a refund like I did from last year? We won't be getting that. So we need to be proactive. Now, tell me, though, at your firm, how does it work with the tax process? I mean, I know you're a financial advisor, you're a father of 4, you're an author, you've got a practice to run. You also have a CPA hat, or how do you help figure this stuff out with your clients?
Yeah, so we do tax planning, not tax preparation. So you'll stick with your current CPA or tax preparer in order to prepare your taxes, but we'll work with them in order to plan your taxes over the future. And it works within our ordinary process because we are holistic. We always look at taxes. Every single client that walks in the office, we're going to look at taxes. And how your process starts with us is a foundation meeting. So when you sit with us for your first meeting, it's about an hour long, and it's all about you. Who you are, where'd you come from, what have you done for work, and then looking ahead and looking towards retirement. What are your goals in retirement? What is it all for? I say a lot. Why do you want to retire? What do you want to do in retirement? And we need to know all of these things because as we go to plan for your retirement, yes, we'll talk numbers, yes, we'll talk statements and IRAs and all that jargon, but we really want to get to know you. And the reason it's called a foundation meeting is because we're creating the foundation for our relationship with you going forward. And we find that to be very important. Then we go through the entire design and analysis piece. Well, we'll do the analysis first on your current situation, and that's where we'll look at taxes. We'll look at your 401ks to see what's available in them. We'll look at your current emergency accounts and sort of your buckets and where your money's at. How much fees are you paying that you really aren't aware of? We run into that a lot where people aren't aware of the fees they're paying inside that. So that's that analysis piece. And then we design a customized plan for you because everybody's different out there. Everybody's situation's different. The amount of assets they have is different. The amount of money they spend is different. How taxable their accounts are, everything's different. So we design a plan customized directly for you, our client. And that's what we really enjoy about putting together this stuff.
Yeah. I know you're saying at the beginning of the show, there used to be the three-legged stool of retirement. Yeah. We had what we had for our own savings, but we probably didn't need as much as we did today because you also had your pension plan and your Social Security. Now, the pension plan, very likely not there, although there's wonderful organizations here around Minnesota. We've got 3M, Medtronic, Abbott, Boston Scientific, Cargill, Best Buy, all of the private businesses that are around, as well as a lot of military retirees. There's a lot of great folks who are here who need help with the retirement. All of these different things, though, have different kinds of 401ks in there. Are you versed to be able to talk about all of these different organizations and help review what they're doing, if they're doing okay, if they're saving enough in these?
Yes, we are. And I think today, what you really need to understand is today is the best time to retire. Today is the best time to go seek out advice because there are so many things changing coming down the road when it comes to taxes. There are so many things changing when it comes to just the economic environment and interest rates. Interest rates are at their highest levels in 17 years. And we've been helping people retire out of 3M, retire out of Medtronic, retire out of Boston Scientific because they just look at it and COVID kind of burned them out and they've worked a couple more years and their accounts recovered too. And now they're sitting at a point where your accounts are high, interest rates are high. It's an absolutely great time to retire. So if you're sitting on the couch right now drinking your cup of coffee and sort of have that thought in the back of my mind, I don't know if I can retire, but I want to find out, at least have that answer, and then you can make the plan after you answer the question, if I can retire.
It's a different way to walk in the front door of work, knowing that I'm going here because I want to, instead of I have to. Knowing that you're saving enough to be able to retire. We can help give you that confidence. Come on in, get your own retirement design. We'll take a look at what you're doing right now and see if we need to make some adjustments to get you to the retirement that you want. Thank you so much for watching, but before you go anywhere, call that phone number down at the bottom of the screen, schedule your appointment, and get your own retirement design. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week.